Hello, everybody. Welcome to the debut show of Nature of Reality Radio. I am your host, Andrew Fisher, streaming live from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And today, on my debut show, I am going to have Rule of Law radio show host Eddie Craig, who is probably best known for that masterpiece presentation he gave on the InfoWars Nightly News. That presentation can be seen on YouTube on the Alex Jones channel, which is called Secrets Police Don't Want You to Know. Again, the title is Secrets Police Don't Want You to Know. I'm not going to be covering this material in any detail on this show because I'd like to cover some other things with Eddie, and everything that could be discussed in regards to the transportation scam is covered in this video. But just to get a feel for who Eddie is, I will read off the description here of this video. Eddie is an Air Force veteran, and let me throw in, he's also a former sheriff's deputy who began realizing that the government was lying to the people at virtually every turn. He earnestly began his research into government rules and statutes in the mid-90s after he witnessed his mother break down into tears of hopeless frustration over a property tax bill that threatened to take away her property and home. Angry at the malicious and callous demeanor of those that supposedly work for the greater good of the people, Eddie began to carefully research and document the relationships between the various statutes and the legislative enactments that created them, especially the ad valorem property tax and eventually the federal income tax. He has since spent the past 11 years researching the various Texas codes such as the Transportation Code. Much to the dismay of many municipalities, police officers, and prosecutors, he has thrown a very large monkey wrench into the gears of their money machine, using their own laws. With Randy Kelton's passed down knowledge about due process and criminal actions, Eddie's research has become even more dangerous to them. Vigorous study and research reveal the truth. Most government employees know even less about the language and appreciation of the law than the general public. Angered by the cavalier attitudes of public servants acting as if their ignorance was of no consequence, Eddie sought out other like-minded people to exchange ideas and find a remedy, which led him to Rule of Law Radio. Eddie has now dedicated himself to fighting the good fight against the total willful ignorance that consumes our public servants at every level of government, an ignorance in which too many people share by way of an apathetic attitude about our rights and liberties. The biggest problem with being apathetic is that it is a word mostly comprised of the word pathetic. Well, let me go off here, off subject a bit, and get a little into why this radio show is so important, this one that I started. The people of planet Earth, I hate to say this, but they are so stupid, many of them are so stupid, that they will refuse to believe something, even if the evidence shows that they have no choice but to believe it. And sadly, that's one reason why the true nature of reality has been suppressed. Vast majority of conspiracy theories are conspiracy facts. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. On that note, the courts don't do what we think they do. The banks don't do what we think they do. Our governments do not do what we think they do. The people who we think are in authority are not the actual people who are in authority. The people who are in authority, well, if you go really down the rabbit hole, you get into some really Twilight Zone material that I will cover at other episodes, completely out of the scope of what we're going to be discussing tonight. But I've decided to bring Eddie on as a good starting point because the law. What are laws? Well, they're not what we think they are. They're not even laws. We're going to get into that on the show. But we need to understand that the law, the legal system, I should say, is in many ways designed to confuse us and not be on our side, on the defendant's side, that is. Yeah, there are conspiracies at every level. I mean, go up all the way to the Supreme Court. Breyer, Kagan, and Ginsburg, three of the justices, are Rothschild Zionists. Yeah, people may want to call me anti-Semitic for saying that. But as someone who understands the true nature of what Rothschild Zionism actually is, you can understand that we got big problems there when people at the top of the ladder of authority are members of a religious movement that, well, not a religious movement, they masquerade as a religious movement, excuse me, a Illuminati movement that masquerades as a religious movement to further its agenda. Right there, you just go down the ladder of the judicial system, and you know that when the people near the top are part of a conspiracy, we got some serious problems. And of course, even more serious problems is this conspiracy at its most complex level is designed to keep our consciousness, biological bodies. We are infinite consciousness. I mean, Yoda told that to Luke Skywalker in Star Wars and said, mind over matter can happen. Luke told him, you want the impossible. And Yoda proved him wrong by using the Force to get that ship out of the water. And Luke said, I don't believe it. And Yoda said, that is why you failed. Well, our consciousness is suppressed by the people at the top of the Illuminati ladder of authority to keep us in the dark about the truth of who we are. Space and time are illusions, folks. There is no space, there is no time. Reality is holographic. Anybody who understands holograms, even mainstream scientists, could tell you that the small part of a hologram is just a smaller representation of the greater whole. And that means you are infinite. And you can manipulate reality by observing it. Double slit experiment done in Austria. They observed the particles. It totally changed the behavior of them. Does that work at the macroscopic level? Bloody hell it does. We're just not good at getting that consciousness out because forces have suppressed it at its most complex level. Well, okay, that's something for another show, but I am expecting Eddie on at 6:15. Well, he's in the Central Time Zone in Texas. I'm here in the suburbs of Philly. But whenever he calls, I'll be ready to turn him on 15:15. But until then, let me get some things started here, I guess, in terms of news, because you got to start off small. I want to get someone like Eddie to help start off with small things by understanding the legal system, because that's something at the third dimensional level, for lack of a better phrase, that everybody could become acquainted with, the legal system. Once you understand the legal and the conspiratorial system, then you can move on that to other things like, oh, what the hell, I'll just mention them anyway, things like UFOs, extraterrestrials, consciousness, and all that kind of stuff that'll be going on in later episodes. But for now, on the subject of law, let me go off my little cheat sheet here to go over some of the things we're going to be talking about. Actually, I think I'll start off with the thing I'm not going to be talking about, and that is the transportation scam. Believe it or not, folks, the cops, the judges, the politicians, and the car insurance salesmen, and others as well, have stolen billions upon billions from the common people. And they've done it through a scam by making us think that we are engaging in commerce, or more, control our lives under the guise of commerce and make us pay money for it, when in fact we aren't. It just so happens that if you are not a commercial driver, or should I say not a commercial traveler, you are not bound by the laws of the road. The statement, driving is a privilege, not a right, is only true if the driver is a commercial driver. And non-commercial drivers, or should I say non-commercial travelers, have the right to drive with no license, no insurance, no registration, and no license plate on their car whenever they please. By the way, I see I have a guest in the chat room, guest 2214. It'd be nice if you could leave a comment so I know exactly who this is. If it's not Eddie, great. I hope you can call in sometime, but if it is, I just need to know. Not only can you drive with no license, no insurance, no registration, and no license plate on your car whenever you please if you're using your own personal car for non-commercial purposes, you are not bound by transportation laws. Transportation laws only apply to commercial drivers. I repeat, transportation laws like speeding and illegal turns and And traffic lights, too, they only apply to commercial drivers. And cops, the courts, the politicians, and car insurance companies obviously don't want you to know that. I mean, the sad part is, even if you do expose this scam, people often want to be scammed. Probably the most striking thing I heard in Eddie's presentation was that he said that whenever he mentions that people always start, well, he says people always start screaming about public safety whenever he starts talking about the stuff I was just talking about, that there's a need to know if the driver is able to use the car. Well, let me make something clear. Having a piece of plastic like a license or a sticker on your car, or a metal on your car windshield, or a metal plate on the trunk of your car is not going to make you any more or less safe than not having those things. By the way, let me just pause here, and I think you guys can already see this on the show page, but the guest call-in number is 646-478-4747. Again, that's 646-478-4747. And like I was saying, having those things is not like a license or a sticker on your car or a metal plate on your car. It's not going to make you any more or less safe than not having those things. And not only that, speed limits are very subjective. I mean, if the roads are not covered in ice or anything, use your own judgment. It's all subjective, judgmental call there. And the thing about this is rights. Your right to travel in this case, to use your own automobile for your own purposes, for non-commercial purposes, where you're not engaging in a for-hire or for-profit job. That's a right. Your rights cannot be given to you by anyone, not even a bunch of founding fathers. No. They didn't give you your rights. Your rights were bestowed upon to you by the Creator. Well, some people say by the Creator. I believe that's a religious context. I prefer to use a context of infinite consciousness, a metaphysical context. Your rights were bestowed to you by infinite consciousness. They cannot be taken away from you by anyone or given to you by anyone, and that includes your right to travel. Well, because of that, it cannot be restricted. And the argument that someone might be a risk is not a valid argument. That argument works for privileges, that you need to restrict the privilege because someone might be a risk. But when it comes to rights, no, they can't take your rights just because someone might be a risk or do something hazardous. I mean, just because someone might have a bomb and bring it onto a plane, does that give them the right to violate your unalienable, not Fourth Amendment, your unalienable right to unreasonable search and seizure at the airport, which they do? I don't think so. It does not. There's no basis in law for what TSA is doing. The only reason they're doing it is because we are letting them do it. Likewise, the only reason we're letting them pull off this transportation scam, well, the only reason they're getting away with it is because we're letting them do it. And even if you wake people up to this stuff, people start screaming about public safety. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, folks, you cannot give up liberty for security. I mean, one of the most popular quotes in all of the freedom movement is, if you give up your liberty for security, then you deserve to have no liberty or security. And that was by Ben Franklin. But I think a more appropriate quote is, if you give up your liberty for security, then you're going to get microchipped. Yeah, folks, I'll be getting into that at other shows, that the ultimate goal of the New World Order, the Illuminati, is a microchip global population. But thing is, they'll brainwash you into doing anything to give up your rights, your liberty for security, saying, we must take away your rights to keep you safe from the terrorists. Well, they can't take away your rights because of terrorists. I mean, no matter how dangerous 9/11 appeared and how bad it was disturbing, depressing, disgusting. It was a terrible thing to have done upon America. It was also an inside job. But people will give up their rights for safety, their right to travel, their right to be free from searches, and national security ain't got nothing to do with the security of the nation, folks. That phrase is an old trick. We must take away your rights in the name of national security. Let me make it clear that the National Security Agency is in many ways a shadow government of America, and the real shadow government in many regards. But national security has a lot to do with the security of information that'll keep the tyrants from being exposed from the tyrants they are. And it also has to do with brainwashing the American people, as I said before. By the way, I say I have someone in the chat room named Celestial Rakia. How you doing? I hope to hear from Eddie Craig in a moment, but I'm glad to see you join the chat room. There should be a lot of people listening. I did go through the trouble of creating a mission for this on planetinfowars.com, and also wrote an article on David Icke's website forum. Hang on, bear with me here. I'm just going to try to log into Facebook to check out Eddie's Facebook page to see if he didn't make any message or anything saying he's not coming on. I'm sure he is, but no, there isn't anything. But glad to see that you're on the chat room. Oh, how you do? He says they beta tested the loss of freedom and chipping in Washington State maybe 10 years ago or so. Oh, well, they're chipping away rights everywhere, trying to brainwash us into giving up our rights for security, like I've been saying. But another way they do it, by the way, I want to get into this too. Another old trick they use is the something to hide and nothing to hide excuse. How many times did you hear them say, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, folks, anybody who says that doesn't care about whether or not you have something to hide, in particular if it's someone in government. They're just saying that to brainwash you into thinking, oh, we must give up our rights because someone might. I'm sorry, folks, you can't take away rights just because someone might have something to hide or might do something hazardous, but people fall for it, and that's another key word. I mean, these are the big three: public safety, national security, something and or nothing to hide. Those are old tricks. You got to keep your ears open for that. If you wake up to that and listen to a politician say that, you know that they're planning something bad, something in terms of taking away liberties. Well, I don't want my liberties taken. I don't want my consciousness suppressed. And that's why I started this show. And by the way, let me give all my condolences out to Greg Prescott of In5D Radio. He told me all about how I should have my own show. Frequently call into his show, In5D Radio. It's a great show. It hasn't been on in a few weeks since he held that Masterpiece Return to Atlantis conference in Sarasota, which I was actually at in first weekend in October. But anyway, by the way, I'll be having someone from that show, from that event on my show. Laura Eisenhower, Dwight Eisenhower's great granddaughter, who blew the whistle on, among other things, bases on Mars in a few years ago that we actually have. Another thing the government's coming up. NASA, not always a straight answer, they say. She'll be on my show. She was at the conference, but it's going to be coming up at a later time. But anyway, I see Celeste Chiraki writes, they have chip mobiles in Washington State in front of grocery stores. Oh, you mean microchip, huh? Well, there was a story they did on Russia Today not that long ago in which they talked about how they were putting microchips in animals. And that was briefly mentioned. And you have to understand, folks, that's a stepping stone. Stepping stone is the way they go about doing things. They can't impose tyranny on us all at once. And so they have to do it in small steps. It's called a totalitarian tiptoe. You start small, take away rights in small increments, and then take away rights in even bigger increments. And over time, people will not realize that the rights are being taken away progressively over and over and over until finally it's too late and it's all taken away and you're under totalitarian rule. And that's what I'm trying to stop with this show. And by the way, let me just call out. Hey, Eddie, if you're listening, please call in. Again, the number is 646-478-4747. And I'd love to have some callers on as well, too. Don't want to make this starting show just me. Eddie knew I was on. I told him 5:15 p.m. Central, because I know he's in Texas. So hopefully I'll hear from him in a moment. But until then, you're still going to be with me. Yeah, as I was saying, Greg Prescott told me I should always have my own show because I always seem to call him with some good information on his show. Guarantee I'm going to give some good information on this show as well. So, yeah, God bless you in your efforts. Thank you, Celestia Rakia. Glad you're on my side here. I'm probably not going to be using the chat room much, folks. It's all yours. I prefer not to type. I prefer to just talk. So, what can I talk about here? I guess I might as well start off small. I've talked about some pretty big things. 9/11 was an inside job, basis on Mars, infinite consciousness. Well, hey, what the heck, folks? You gotta maybe get a feel for what this show's going to be like. And regardless of how I decide to start, who I decide to start with, things are going to be, we're going to have a good time on this show. I can guarantee it, because I'll do whatever I can to expand your consciousness and expose the scams that we are dealing with. And, well, I guess as long as I'm waiting for Eddie, I might as well talk about the thing that I was going to talk about that he's not really an expert in. He's more an expert on beating the system. Well, this also has to do with the beating system, but it comes from a metaphysical level. I'll be talking about metaphysical stuff to a great extent, and specifically in the subject of law. A former Church of Satan member turned whistleblower by the name of Mark Passio, who I've met at a lot of protests down in the Philly area, did a presentation. And by the way, I'd recommend this to everybody. This presentation is called Occult Mockery of Police and Military Personnel. And it talks all about how the uniforms that police wear and the symbology that they wear, and even the colors they wear, plays a direct role in the way they act, and it's set up that way. Just like how the Illuminati views us as nothing more worthy than cattle, the police and the military are viewed as nothing more worthy of than dogs, guard dogs. In fact, Mark Passio even said that in his presentation. He said that the Illuminati refers to the police as our dogs. And they even make them wear dog tags to make it seem like that. It's absolutely pathetic, I know, but that's the way they view life. They have no empathy for us or the people that they recruit to do their dirty work. Everything's compartmentalized, folks. Not everything, but most things. Just like how 170,000 people worked on the Manhattan Project and had no idea what they were doing until after the bombs were dropped. They realized, oh my God, what have we done? Never realizing that they were participating in a conspiracy to bomb Japan, because they were all doing their own little part, their own little thing. to fulfill the bomb dropping. Well, that's the way it is in many ways. The educational system, the religious system, the government system, the banking system, the judicial system, the many corporations too. Corporations control the governments, let me make that clear, especially the banks. The banks are at the top of the ladder of authority in many ways. Well, there's more above the banks, but banks are those powerful corporations, so the corporations control the government. But on to what I was going to talk about here. The police and the military wear a lot of symbology, including the U.S. Army's five-pointed star pointing upward. And I'm actually going off my notes here. I went through the trouble of taking notes while watching Mark Passio's presentation. The U.S. Army symbol is a five-pointed star pointing upwards, which represents sovereignty, which is done to convey the concept of sovereignty in proxy. The symbol affects the subconscious mind, which already knows the meaning of the upright pentagram. The problem, though, is that the U.S. Army cares nothing about respecting the sovereignty of others. And the Uncle Sam also has a star in the hat in the third eye area for the reasons I just mentioned. The third eye, the pineal gland, allows us to attain higher states of consciousness. Sometimes they want us to keep the pineal gland open. Sometimes they want to keep it closed to suppress our consciousness. Sometimes they want to keep it open too, so they can use it to brainwash us. But the five-star general's emblem also uses this symbolism, and this five-pointed star, it's very Illuminati symbology there. The pentagram in the middle, the pentagon in the middle. It's no accident the pentagon is shaped like a pentagon. Massive Illuminati symbolism right there. And U.S. Air Force emblem. This would be something very close to Eddie's heart. It has a five-pointed star pointing up for that reason as well. And the face of a demon can actually be seen in this emblem if it is colored properly. Massive Satanism within the Illuminati. When I say Satanism, I don't mean Christian Satanism. I'm talking about worship by fire, sacrifice, blood drinking, all that kind of stuff. That's something you want to be a part of. And this inverted five-pointed star, the inverted five-pointed star, can be found on the Victoria Police's emblem. This isn't just military, this is also police as well. And the Military Medal of Valor also has an invented pentagram with a goddess symbol in the center of it. It also has an octagon symbol in it. Octagon is Illuminati symbolism right there. You have to understand this symbolism. Every symbol has its own consciousness, and every consciousness has its own essence, and whether it's love consciousness or fear consciousness, in many cases, in almost all cases here, this is fear consciousness. If the symbology is designed to represent something fearful, then the person who's wearing that symbol will be affected at a fear-based level. Not necessarily a scaredy cat when I mean fear, but like anger, fear, aggression. The dark side are they, as Yoda would say. That's the kind of anger I'm talking about. And one thing that Mark Passio doesn't cover, which I actually want to cover here, in regards to symbolism, Judge's cloak that Judges wear is a symbol for Saturn. And Saturn symbolism, massive Illuminati symbolism in regards to Saturn. And a lot of what we thought was sun symbolism is actually Saturn symbolism. And if Judges had not been wearing that Saturn symbol robe, which is tantamount to Satan symbolism, they'd behave a little better, because their consciousness essence is suppressed by wearing that robe in the same way that consciousness essence is suppressed by the police and military. And also going to get into some color stuff here. You ever wonder why police lights are red and blue? Well, it's to symbolize and cause imbalance. Red symbolizes male energy dominance, while blue symbolizes cops following orders of their superiors. Superiors who view them as our dogs, guard dog worthy. If the police lights were green, you can bet there would be less imbalance, because green is a color of balance. And let me make it clear that there's a reason why money is colored green. They want to make money green because that gives money a feeling of balance, and money, if anybody who understands our financial system, where they loan us money that doesn't exist and charge us interest on it, makes debt and inflation unavoidable. Well, there's total imbalance there because it's designed to fail, and they put the color green on money to make us think, oh, this is a balanced thing, we're gonna use it, when it's all just numbers on a freaking screen. Digital money, which makes up well over 99% of all the money is out there, and the paper money, that's also numbers on a screen. Okay, but anyway, I'm digressing. On the subject of symbology here, the black and white checkers wrapped around hats you may have seen of some cops to tell cops in a mocking way that their consciousness has been suppressed and imbalanced. Those checkers, that's Freemason symbology. And they wrap it around to suppress the consciousness essence of the brain. And some cops hats have the octagon-shaped hats to suppress consciousness of the crown chakra. Oh, and I probably should mention chakras. I'll be getting to this in later episodes, but the body has chakras, 7 main ones going down from the crown to the root, and the heart chakra is the one that's probably considered by many to be the most significant. So when you want to meditate with your heart chakra. But the symbology affects the chakras as well, and the some cops logos, like the Sussex Police logo, have the octagon as well to suppress the consciousness of the crown chakra. And anytime you see a police logo with a square on top of a square, it symbolizes we control everything. We meaning the occultists, not the cops, and the satanic Illuminati occultists. And they're trying to convey that message to the cops at a subconscious level. It's interesting to know, why is the word police? Where does that come from? Well, the word police, when broken up, is pole ice, which symbolizes, in dark Masonic mockery, the middle pillar. Oh, and let me make it let me make something clear about Masonic stuff. Freemasonry plays a lot of role in America. Founding fathers are Freemasons. Let me make it clear. Many Freemasons are ignorant. There's compartmentalization there. I think the founding fathers knew what their Illuminati masters were actually planning to do to America in the future. Oh no. Founding fathers wanted America to be free. The people who were controlling the founding fathers didn't. Founding fathers were kept in the dark about that, never realizing that while they were fighting for freedom, they were in many ways creating a country under the guise of freedom. And the word police, like I said, when broken up, symbolizes, well, broken up makes the words pole ice, which symbolizes the middle pillar, which symbolizes how you can't climb an icy pole, to represent how you are stuck in a stalemate with police. This is a form of green language, which is a code language used by those within the Illuminati. The word officer, and this is also some green language I want to get into, the word officer makes the words off eye seer, which symbolizes how the third eye is subdued. The word military makes my light Alri, to symbolize suppressed consciousness. And the word soldier becomes soul dire, to symbolize how the soul has died. Hey, this is Mark Pastor talking. He was a Church of Satan member turned Illuminati whistleblower. I think he knows what he's talking about here. And like I said, the dog tags are put on the cops' military to symbolize how they view them as worthless dogs. but even worse, they view us as cattle. And the number 911 symbolizes falling short of one's will and loss of love and consciousness. The number 911, why is that used for phones, to call the police? Well, now you know. Obviously, another reason why 9/11 happened on the date it did, among many reasons. This is one. And the word government in and of itself comes from the words to control the mind, if you were to look at the history of that word. And do you ever wonder where the word cop-out comes from? They use that as a cop-out, not an explanation, it's just a cop-out. Well, it symbolizes how cops do bad things. Very interesting, huh? I don't really know what's going on here. I told Eddie to have him on at 6:20. I can only imagine that something unexpected must have happened to him. I hope he's all right. But yeah, my number is 646-478-4747. Don't be shy. Call in. I need people to listen to, talk about some things. Hey, I even study the law in my free time like Eddie does. I might be maybe even to help you. If I don't know the answer for sure, I won't say anything, I promise. But in general, I think I can understand this stuff pretty well, help you with. Spend a lot of my free time looking into this stuff, just like I spend a lot of my free time looking into things like conspiracies, extraterrestrials, consciousness, and whatnot. It's worth it. And frankly, I don't care what people think about me. Worst prison is the fear of what other people think. You got to understand that, folks. That's another thing that is used to suppress our consciousness. The fear of what other people think. David Icke says, worst fear ever, the worst prison ever, is the fear of what other people think. Because that's how, in many ways, how humans act as their own sheepdogs. David Icke often uses the analogy, humans are like sheep. They are led into ritual to do things. Whenever a new trend comes, they all go to the show to take part in that trend, or the movie comes out, they all go to the movies. Just like sheep being herded by the shepherd and the sheepdog. And when any human steps out of line, some other human acts as a sheepdog and does something. And to stop the human from stepping out of line. Jordan Maxwell also used another analogy to describe humans. He views them as like the animals on the African Sahara that are by the river, just minding their own business, never waiting for something to happen, something they don't think will happen, and then all of a sudden they get attacked by a lion or some predator. Very unpleasant experience there. And or at the very least hassled and lucky to survive. I don't know. I think it's a pretty grotesque analogy there, but in general, you have to understand most humans do have a fear of what other people think. That's another reason why it's so easy for the government to keep a secret. You say, governments can't keep secrets. They're incompetent. They can't do anything. The government can get away with anything as long as people refuse to believe that the government would do evil things to them. One such one such political cartoon that I've seen that actually describes that pretty well, that I really, really like, is one where about half a dozen sheep are in a circle and just mind their own business, talking, and there's a sheep on the outside saying, I'm telling you, boys, the shepherd and the sheepdog are working together. And one of the sheep in the circle says, oh, shut up, Bob. You and your conspiracy theories. I'm thinking, okay, see, now that's a perfect example why it's so easy for governments to often get away with conspiracies. I mean, might as well get this over with now. Think you can't prove 9/11 was an inside job? Well, you can. First of all, there's two proofs that really say it all. First of all, the official story is impossible because of the violations of the laws of physics. Kudos to many groups like Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth who have exposed that. But some Americans, many Americans and many people that are not Americans just refuse to acknowledge that. But as far as proof goes, and folks, I got to get this out. I know it's a sensitive subject, but it absolutely must be taken care of, and the sooner the better. Out of all the many people that actually have talked and said something about 9/11, including Michael Springman, Robert Wright, Richard Grove, Barry Jennings, Susan Lindauer, Sybil Edmonds, Indira Singh, William Bergman, and April Gallup, to name a few, the most notable example would be John Farmer Jr., the senior counsel to the 9/11 Commission. In his 2009 book, The Ground Truth, The Story Behind America's Defense on 9/11, John Farmer Jr. wrote, quote, "In the course of our investigation into the national response to the attacks, the 9/11 Commission staff discovered that the official version of what had occurred on the morning of 9/11, that is, what the government and military officials had told Congress, the Commission, the media, and the public about who knew what when, was almost entirely and inexplicably untrue." Farmer then said the public had been seriously misled about what occurred during the morning of the attacks, and that at some level of government, at some point in time, there was an agreement not to tell the truth about what happened. Well, if what government told the commission, and this is their own senior counsel talking here, if the government told the commission what they told them is untrue, then why am I a lunatic for asking questions about what happened to 3,000 of my fellow countrymen? And by the way, I borrowed that quote from Jim Marrs. He exposed this quote in his $1 Trillion Conspiracy presentation. It's another presentation that I would recommend you watch. Read his book, The $1 Trillion Conspiracy, too. It's also a great book. I read that. Exposes a lot of things, but Farmer then said that the public had been misled. Yeah, like I said, it was untrue. And at some point in government, we don't know which point in government, but at some point in government, he flat out says that there was an agreement not to tell the truth about what happened. An agreement not to tell the truth. That equals conspiracy. It's not rocket science, folks. He wasn't trying to confess to a crime, but he did. The confession to a crime is a proof. Many people will consider that proof, and if you don't consider that proof, then, well, you might as well not believe anything. But other than that, there is another thing that you can prove. I hate to say this is a sensitive subject, but might as well get into it. The nanothermite in the World Trade Center dust. Nanothermite is a military-grade explosive which can only be manufactured in labs, military labs, owned by the United States military. They found nanothermite in the World Trade Center dust. That's tantamount to finding DNA or fingerprints at a crime scene. And the fact that nanothermite can only be made in military labs owned by the U.S. government, and I believe that the only lab that is known to have the technology on the face of the earth is one in Colorado, then that means that forces within the U.S. military and industrial complex executed 9/11. Of course, in terms of science, by the way, folks, science, it can't be. On one sense, a lot of it is untrue because the Illuminati has deliberately concealed things from us, and any scientist who exposes the truth about reality will lose their job. It's another reason why it's often so hard to get the truth out. But, I mean, the laws of physics violating the official story of 9/11 cannot be true on multiple grounds, as architects and engineers have exposed. It is just so hard for people to accept that their government would lie to them. They will flat out refuse to believe it. That I refuse to believe mentality, a sign of being a paradigmatic, wishful thinker, causes a lot of trouble, yes, and a lot of trouble for us. Because as long as people refuse to believe, I'll say this once, I'll say it again, the government can get away with pretty much anything. That ain't good. To put it plainly. But you can also use science to find out what actually happened on 9/11. And it wasn't just nanothermite. Oh no, that was only used to sever the building columns, so Rudy Giuliani and his minions could carry it off on trucks to China. Direct energy weapon was used, people. It's so obvious. How else could they have been dustified? Come on, I'm not stupid. Now, some people are too stupid; they won't believe it, even if the evidence shows it. But nanothermite has been shown can't possibly cause the dustification we saw. The World Trade Center was nuked. VeteransToday.com has an article titled "Mystery Solved: The World Trade Center was nuked on 9/11." Strongly encourage you to read that. It'll explain a lot about how we know a direct energy weapon was used, and which in turn just goes to show you that the technology that's in the public arena is always less complex than the technology that's at the government and Illuminati level. And that could very well mean that a lot of UFOs we see are actually government technology. That's actually something that David Icke has been talking about for a while. Don't assume that just because you see a UFO, it's an alien. A lot of it could just be a hoax to in some ways, they even scare us. I mean, first they staged something like a terrorist attack. Who knows, could they one day in the future stage something like an alien invasion? Well, they might say, in the name of saving the earth, you must give up your rights. We can't fall for it. Because if we do, we're in a lot of trouble, folks. That's the nature of reality. In many ways, that's how it unfortunately works. And I'm here to expose that. I still don't have Eddie on for whatever the reason. But I guess I'll just go over the cheat sheet here that I was planning to go with him. What is the one and only one reason the government was created? Individual authority versus group authority. Government was created for one purpose only: to exert by collective force necessary to protect the rights and property of every single individual that has ever lived. I repeat, government was created for one purpose only: to exert by collective force necessary to protect the rights and property of every single person who has ever lived, in particular, people who are under the auspices of that particular government. This is true with all governments. We the people created the government. The governments are ones of limited powers delegated by the people. If the people do not have individual power, individual authority, then they cannot delegate that authority to their representatives in government. The government has usurped that. There's no question about that. Let me give you a little common sense, folks. Common sense says, and by the way, this is what Eddie once told me when I called into his radio show once. He said, if I do not have the power to do something as an individual, then getting together in a group doesn't grant that power anymore. Because as individuals, that was an authority we never had, so getting together in a group, like a government or a police department, does not grant us that authority anymore. That's common sense. One example Eddie liked to use was in the Old West. The farmer would have gunslingers and whatnot try to take over his property, and they would form in a group to protect that farmer. Now that's one case where getting together in a group serves a good purpose. A purpose of making sure that a person's rights and their property are protected. The government doesn't want to protect our rights. They want to control us. They want to move towards totalitarianism in small steps. They want to take our liberties bit by bit until there's nothing left. And one way they're doing that is through laws known as malum prohibitum. Malum prohibitum versus malum in se. The former is what the government is not supposed to be doing. The latter is what it's okay to do. Malum in se. Crimes that are that are bad through themselves, I believe is the Latin way of speaking that phrase. Elements say laws like theft and any situation where you cause harm to someone. And let me make it clear to you, someone cannot be charged with a crime unless some sort of a corpus delicti can be shown. Corpus delicti means body of a crime. If there is no harm, no body to the crime, if they can't show that you caused harm, intended to cause harm, or did something negligent that resulted in harm, then there is no crime. This means that a lot of the laws that malum prohibitum laws, illegal because they're prohibited, were never something the government had authority to pass in the first place, including drug laws, among other things. You're not harming anyone by putting drugs in your own body. The only time they can charge you with a crime is if you use the excuse of being under the influence to cause harm to someone else or their property, or show negligence that results in that. But they've usurped that, no question. Many people are having their lives ruined because of criminal records, because of laws that were never legal to pass in the first place. I mean, you can still get a job with a criminal record, but you got to agree to give up your right to work for minimum wage. And a lot of people just don't want to do that. Who does? But some people, for reasons, are just incapable of doing it. And many of these malum prohibitum laws are what are taking away our rights bit by bit, and we need to fight back. But the legal system makes it hard to fight back because, well, for one, whenever there's a legal definition of a word, it will always be different than the standard English dictionary definition. If that were not the case, there would be no need to redefine it. And this is one way that this transportation scam that I was mentioning at the beginning of the show works. If you're not a commercial driver, or should I say if you're a non-commercial traveler, you cannot be driving, you cannot be engaging in transportation, and you cannot be operating a vehicle. Because the terms driving, transportation, operate, and vehicle are all terms which are legally defined, not dictionary defined, not standard English dictionary defined, legally defined as being commerce specific. And those commerce specific terms, we're not supposed to know that they're commerce specific, and if you end up using one in a court, or in that case, not using a word properly, mentioning not objecting to a word that has a legal definition, you can be found guilty of a crime that you never even committed. And that's how this scam works. And by the way, I want to point out, I strongly advise everybody not only watch Eddie Seeger's Please Don't Want You to Know video on the Alex Jones channel, but also take some time to study his transportation code script. The police ever stop you on the when they pull you over for a transportation law, you can follow this script, and even if the cops write the ticket anyway, don't worry about it. When you go to court, you can object to the use of those words that I was mentioning earlier that have legal definitions, and you will be found not guilty if you do that properly. Probably shouldn't be talking about this much. Eddie is the expert, but in general, that's the gist of it. There's also a red light camera script, by the way. If you ever run a red light and want to don't want to pay the fine, send that in as well. And since I'm on this subject, folks, I want to make it clear. Even though you can't be charged with transportation crimes, you can be charged with negligence, reckless endangerment, and property damage if you drive like a maniac. So I want to point out there is a moral obligation to drive carefully. But when the cops pull you over, that's when you better start acting like you understand that transportation laws don't apply to it unless you're a commercial driver. So follow this advice, memorize the script, or at the very least keep it in your car with a camera so you can record your encounter with the police. If they bash out your window and take you to jail, oh goody, you get to sue the hell out of them. And everyone else in the chain too. But moving on down the list here, taxes. Paying taxes, federal income tax, is voluntary. But how can paying taxes be voluntary if you go to jail for not paying them? You go to jail for not paying them because it's a disgusting, despicable scam that they're getting away with. And they're getting away with it because we're letting them get away with it. Folks, how can it be illegal to not pay money you never owed? Shows that taxes are voluntary. If you borrow money and you don't pay it back, and the person has a legitimate IOU against you, sure, they can sue you. You're harming them by not paying the money back. But the IRS, which, by the way, is a private agency which masquerades as a government agency, as is the Federal Reserve. Think I'm crazy. Google, or more specifically Startpage, because Startpage is an NSA run. Startpage, Puerto Rico Trust Fund 62. You'll find out the truth about how the IRS is technically privately owned. And if they take your money the way they're doing, that's armed robbery. If they have the SWAT team break down your door to take you to jail for not paying your taxes, that's kidnapping. So the fact that the IRS is privately owned, and the fact that it cannot be illegal to not pay money you never owed, that shows that paying taxes is voluntary. And you go to jail for not paying them because we're letting them do it. And something I want to get into here, this is going to come as a shock to a lot of freedom fighters. The U.S. Constitution and many state constitutions do not actually exist. I repeat, the U.S. and many state constitutions do not actually exist. Don't worry. Your rights are not given to you by the Constitution. They're given to you by the Creator, by infinite consciousness, which is what we are. They can't be taken away from you. They can't be given to you. Not even a document. Well, why is the Constitution an illegal document? The Constitution's existence truly is an illusion, folks. And there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, the secondary reason. Well, actually, the secondary reason really isn't a reason. I'm going to get into a comical reason why that's the case. But Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph 5. Let me read that out loud. And before I actually read this, let me read it the way that it was in the original draft of the Constitution. And I'll say the word comma when because commas are very significant here. The clause, Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph 5 reads, no person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution, comma, shall be eligible to the office of President. Well, that was when it was originally drafted, before it went to the Committee on Styles and Punctuation. Now, this could be a case of sabotage. Forces within the Illuminati, possibly, who the Founding Fathers were completely oblivious to. Sabotage the Constitution. This is only a theory, but it makes sense in a way. The clause actually reads, and this is the updated version, no person except a natural-born citizen, comma, or a citizen of the United States, comma, at the time of the adoption of this Constitution, comma, shall be eligible to the office of President. Well, we have a problem there. Grammatically speaking, the commas imply that only somebody who was alive at the time of the adoption of the Constitution can be President of the United States, because the comma, the first comma, modifies the meaning of the rest of the clause. No person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States. And then the words "at the time" appear. Only someone who was alive at the time of the adoption of the Constitution can be President of the United States. Well, there ain't a human being alive who was alive at the time of the adoption of the Constitution of the United States of America. And by the way, I want to point out United States of America because that becomes significant too for other reasons. Is alive now, so nobody's eligible to be President of the United States of America. But that's a secondary reason why the Constitution is an illegal document. The primary reason why the Constitution is an illegal document is because the Founding Fathers never passed it with the consent of the people. I can't really get into many of the details here, but if you want to know details, read Lysander Spooner's book, No Treason. That book will explain in great detail why the Constitution cannot be applicable to all the states. The Founding Fathers, and the non-Founding Fathers who were in on this too, bless their hearts, did not go through the proper procedure to pass this Constitution, Constitution of the United States of America, without getting permission from the people, consent from the people, and that means the Constitution was never valid from the beginning. So you can ignore Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph 5. And, well, like I said, the Constitution, its existence is an illusion. You could, in theory, since the people in government take an oath to defend it, if you want to prove their hypocrisy, and my God, they're hypothetical like never before nowadays, point out how they're violating the thing that they took an oath to defend. But on another matter, speaking of government, there's something that needs to be made very clear. Our government is not actually a true government. It's actually a corporation. The United States. That's United States with a capital U in it, folks. The United States of America, with a lowercase u in United, and I emphasize United States of America, is the same as the several states of the Union. The Union being America. America is the country. United States, or the several states, is meant to describe the 50 states together into a collective whole. And believe me, the Founding Fathers wanted to unify the states into a collective whole to make sure nobody got left out in terms of their rights, which is why they created the Constitution. But in the end, they didn't get the consent of the common people, so that means the Constitution was never valid from the beginning. And, well, the United States with a capital U in United and a capital S in States is the name of the corporation which masquerades as our government. And the United States Corporation, who is the CEO? Barack Hussein Obama, that's who. What's to stop him from sitting at the top of that corporation? Pretty much nothing. But by masquerading as a corporation, there's a lot of things they can do, and in some cases get away with, under the guise of commerce. Like one thing they do under the guise of commerce, I was mentioning earlier, the transportation code scam, where they scam us into thinking that transportation laws apply to commercial drivers and non-commercial drivers, when in fact they only apply to commercial drivers. And something I wanted to get into with Eddie, something must have happened to him. It's not like him to forget this. I'm going to try to have a word with him about why this happened, but everything has actually been reduced to maritime commercial law as the only law. And everything's under commerce. And they don't want us to know that actually the only governments that aren't corporations they might as well be corporations because they're dictatorships like Venezuela, Syria, North Korea, Iran, and well, one reason the Illuminati is using America as the Roman Empire of the modern era and trying to invade other countries. America invades other countries more than anyone else. I want to get that out because the Illuminati, who controls every single national government on planet Earth, every single national government on planet Earth is bought, paid for, and controlled by the Illuminati special interests. And though countries that are not corporations, the Illuminati still does not have the banking system, control the banking system in those countries. And that's one reason they want to invade it. There's another reason they want to invade those countries like Syria and stage things like nerve gas attacks to do it. One reason why they do that is because they want a third world war. If they can create a third world war, folks, they can use that to justify taking away our rights, our liberties, and under the guise of trying to prevent a third world war from ever happening again. And that's what they did with the First and Second World War. A little history for you. First World War was a stepping stone to creating global government. The same banks financed both sides of the war. The banks which are controlled by the Illuminati. And these banks, they pulled the strings by financing both sides of the war. And by doing that, they got the outcome they wanted. And in the case of the Second World War, they created the United Nations. It's supposed to be an organization that fights for peace. In reality, it's an organization that's supposed to push the agenda for global government. And boy, there's a lot of organizations that do that, such as the Council on Foreign Relations and whatnot. Trilateral Commission is another powerful one. And the United Nations, under the guise of fighting for world peace, which is, by the way, the United Nations, if there is a global totalitarian government which the Illuminati wants, they will use the United Nations as the global headquarters. Many people think the UN is for peace. It ain't. It masquerades as that. So much masquerading, it's disgusting. And if they get a third world war, that's when they'll eventually be able to create, unless we oppose it, they would eventually be able to create that global authoritarian government they want. And let me point out that while they're trying to do that, they're currently trying to create a North American Union and the Pacific Union. They've already got a European Union and an African Union, making it seem like they were trying to unify those countries into a collective whole to fight for people's rights, like the Founding Fathers were trying to do when they created the Constitution. But that's not the reason they were trying to unify it into a collective whole. The reason they were trying to unify it into a collective whole is a stepping stone. Stepping stone, stepping stone. You hear that over and over. It bears repeating, folks. Stepping stone. To create the global government they want. There's a good diagram that I like that describes this, that David Icke often uses in his books. At the very top of the diagram are is the term global government. And by that I mean a global totalitarian government, or at the very least authoritarian, although it would probably be totalitarian, sadly. And they want a world army, a global currency. They want the currency to be electronic, and there are fundamental implications for freedom for that. If you can't use cash, then there is no backup plan. You can only use digital money. And the digital money, if it can't be used, how can you buy something? You can't. And they also want, as I mentioned this before, a microchip global population. You give up liberty for security, you're going to get microchipped. Boy, there were two things that David Icke got ridiculed a lot for in the early 90s. It would be the microchip and the reptile aliens, of course. But people aren't laughing now. Microchipping dogs in Great Britain, as I mentioned earlier. And they microchip you, there goes the free will. But at the top of that diagram, as I was mentioning, are the words world government with global currency, world army, microchip global population. And then that connects to four other groups known as the North American Union, African Union, European Union, and Pacific Union. They already have African and European Union, as I said. And all of those actually formed from earlier groups, like the European Union formed from the EEC, and the North American Union formed from NAFTA. And below those four squares, they have the term that David Icke uses in another box, the terms nation, state, and states and regions. They would still divide up the North American Union and the rest of the unions up into nation, states, and regions, just because, for the sake of simplification, I presume. And below that, at the very bottom of the diagram, you got the people. The people who form the government. Why would the people who formed a government for one purpose only, to protect and serve the people, to exert by any force necessary to protect the rights and property of every single person who has ever lived under the auspices of that specific government, would allow for a totalitarian government? Well, Jordan Maxwell often says that humans will accept anything, including totalitarianism. And unless we wake up, unless we get divine help or spiritual help, by the way, I'll be getting to that in later shows too. Got to start off small with this one. But then we're going to be in a lot of trouble. I don't want to fearmonger. I mean, someone who listens to a lot of Alex Jones and InfoWars Nightly News is probably bound to fearmonger a little bit. But you have to understand, sometimes it's the only way of doing it. Personally, I think listening to Alex Jones helped me overcome some of my fears, and I'd recommend it to anyone. I mean, once you get past understanding the conspiracies, then you got to move on to metaphysics, as far as I'm concerned, because that's a next level thing. But anyway, I'm digressing. Point is, our government was designed to protect our rights. We designed it that way, but now it's turning into more and more totalitarian every day. A lot of metaphysics experts have said that it'll probably come crumbling down in the near future for reasons that I'll also get into in later shows, but I prefer not to think that would happen. I personally prefer to keep going all out, do it at a know your infinite consciousness, but in many ways act at a third dimensional level, not acknowledging that there's any divine help helping you, because if you acknowledge that there's divine help helping you or think about it, you might be tempted to sit back and relax and do nothing, which is in many ways what the New Age movement does. That's a scam in many ways. I agree with the metaphysics, but I don't agree with the sit back and relax, the divine will come and help you. I don't agree with that. But point is, folks, it's a house of cards. The people are at the bottom. Well, in the New World Order and the government's opinion, the people are at the bottom. But we're the keystone that holds the structure together, the arch together. We're at the bottom of the pyramid, the base that holds the rest of the pyramid up. If we stand up and fight, we can overpower them easily. I'm sure you've all at some point seen that movie, A Bug's Life, from, I think it was 1999, children's movie, but it contains a scene that David Icke and other researchers have often made reference to. That scene where the grasshoppers say, we don't need to go to the ants to make them act as our slaves to collect food for us like we always do, because we got enough food. We don't need to control the ants. But one of the grasshoppers says, if you let one ant stand up to us, they might all stand up to us. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they figure that out, there goes our way of life. This is not about having the ants gather food for us. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Going back to keep the ants in line and impose our evil will upon them. That was enough to convince the grasshoppers, hey, we need to control the ants, or else we're done for. Well, likewise, we the people, we overpower them by a ratio much greater than 100 to 1. And many people just want to act like ostriches with our heads in the sand. I'm sorry if my love-hate attitude towards the human race is angering a lot of you listeners, but sometimes you need to have an attitude to get this stuff out. I believe that, and that's why I'm saying this. If we rise up, expand our consciousness, expanding consciousness and realizing you're infinite, because space and time are illusions and whatnot is a huge realization, because that's the biggest key to holding our consciousness in check and keeping us in check. Realize you're infinite opens up the door to all sorts of things. I've realized that myself, and I'm telling you right now, it's opened the door to all kinds of things, all kinds of synchronicities too, for that matter. If it worked for me, it'll work for a lot of you. Seeing 11:11 on the clock all the time is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to synchronicities that I've experienced. But realize you're infinite, it'll open the door. If we realize we're infinite, it'll open the door to being the Illuminati control system, the Illuminati bloodlines that have been controlling humanity since the time of ancient Sumeria and sooner. Atlantis ain't a myth, folks. I'll get into that in other shows. But they've been controlling us ever since then. The Illuminati bloodlines. Better understand the Illuminati bloodlines, read Fritz Springmeier's book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. It's like 800 pages, but it's totally worth reading. I've read all of it. You won't touch the reptile aliens, though. All right, the subject for another show, but if enough people can expand their consciousness and realize they're infinite, are we going to ascend another dimension of consciousness out of this third-dimensional reality that we think we're flesh and blood and the earth is just a rock with no life? Yeah, we'll ascend to another dimension of consciousness. We are infinite. We're everything that is, was, and ever will be. What does that mean? It means we are infinite possibility. If you're infinite possibility, why are we following a matrix routine? By the way, you want to understand the true nature of reality, watch the movie The Matrix. It's a perfect analogy to describe the nature of reality and the slaves that we are, just like Neo was a slave. But this reality, get up in the morning, eat a breakfast, go to work 8 hours, 9 to 5, go back home, eat dinner, watch the news, or in my case, watch YouTube. I'm not really a TV guy because I understand it's a brainwashing thing, but after you do that, maybe read a bit, go to bed, then get up in the morning, eat breakfast, go to work, go home, eat dinner, watch the news, read, go to bed, then I get up, then I go to work, then I get home from work. We are infinite consciousness, and this is what's happening. David Icke said what I just said at his Wembley talk, which, by the way, I was at in London. I was at the Wembley talk in London. It was a great 10-hour presentation. Ended up falling asleep, though, for three-quarters of part two because the jet lag from flying across the Atlantic caught up with me. How sad. But anyway, it was a great experience. And when he said we are infinite consciousness and we are in this ridiculous matrix routine, everybody applauded. Because that statement should make anybody want to realize, why am I in this rut? Why am I in this routine? Why am I in this 9-to-5 job working for money, which is just numbers on a freaking screen? By the way, something I'm going to discuss in later shows, Earth is the only planet, according to ET contactees like Alex Collier, that uses money. The only planet in the Milky Way that uses money. We've signed a soul contract of sorts because we've chosen to use money. I mean, if we had to use money, why can't we not have a debt-based system? Well, we do, and we go along with it. And people are so cognitively dissonant that they go along with it. Well, it's time to stop going along with it. Start realizing you are infinite consciousness. Start realizing you are everything that is, was, and ever will be. And the door will open up, the house of cards will come crashing down, and we'll ascend into other dimensions of consciousness. Some people can't handle the truth, and some people can't be woken up. Their belief systems, their beliefs, emphasis on beliefs. Their beliefs are too rigid. You create your own reality because you're infinite consciousness. Well, there is a lot of free will interference going on. That's where the Illuminati comes in. There's no question about that. But in general, you create your own consciousness. You create your own reality. Because you're infinite. What you give is what you get. I mean, if you fearmonger, it's going to come back to bite you. I mean, I've heard Alex Jones talk about some personal experiences that were somewhat unpleasant. Well, he receives that because he fearmongers, and by scaring people, he consequently is going to have things happen to him that could be considered, if you don't fearmonger, you're probably not going to suffer that, but it's still going to come back to bite you and the rest of the people, because sometimes, well, fear-mongering has to be done. In this third-dimensional reality, it's impossible not to have some fear. It's the way the Matrix has been set up. Not fear as in scaredy cat, as I said, fear of, like anger, fear, aggression. And by the way, let me make it clear that just because someone does not have a fear of exposing corruption, like is brave enough to go out and speak out, that does not necessarily mean that they're not going to have a phobia or a fear of something specific, like roller coasters or snakes or something. Fear of snakes. There's a reason why people fear reptiles. That's a subject for another show. But anyway, when it comes to fear, phobias and general overall fear, there's a difference there. Just because you're afraid of roller coasters does not mean you're not going to be afraid to speak out, as I said. But fear is what keeps our consciousness suppressed for the most part, or put another way, not having enough love. Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. Well, space and time are illusions. You create your own reality, but infinite love. What is infinite love? Well, it's what you want to show, because it's obviously not what's fear. Everything can be broken up into two emotions, for lack of a better phrase: fear and love. Every emotion can be some subgroup of fear and love. Which would you choose? I think the question answers itself. Can't imagine why you would choose fear unless you need mental help. But if we choose love, it'll open up the door to our consciousness immensely. And another thing you can do, if you don't want to meditate, meditating is great for expanding consciousness, but if you don't want to meditate, probably even better than meditating, get out and be active. Get out, do something. Speaking of getting out, do something. Hey, guest 2703 in the chat room, you're the only person there. Say something. Have a little fun. Talk on the chat. I probably won't chime in because I prefer to just keep my talking going. But say something. Throw your 2 cents in. Give me a suggestion or something. I don't care. I already lost my train of thought. But, yeah. You create your reality. There's free will interference. But if you show love, it will show. You'll have synchronicities galore. You'll have things coming back to you galore. And if you get out and be active, that's love too. Getting out and exposing the truth. Yeah, I was talking about getting out and getting active. Check the internet for local things going on in your area. Facebook may be NSA monitored. Yeah, the NSA spying ain't about safety. It's about tyranny, but that's a side issue. Long live Ed Snowden and Tom Drake. But if you participate in activities hard enough, long enough, you'll eventually gather a huge following. I mean, and if you keep working hard at it, the following will grow and grow and grow. Just look at David Icke. I mean, there's a reason why I make reference to David Icke a lot. Out of all the researchers, he's the one I admire most because of his willingness to talk about things that many people won't dare talk about, and also his ability to get ridiculed, but then all the ridicule turns to seriousness over time with a large following. One of the best ways to expand your consciousness is to gather a large following. And Webbot creator Cliff High once said that David Icke is the guy the power elites fear the most, and it's because he has gathered a large following of people. And let me get into a little metaphysics here. You knew I wasn't going to just talk about law here. You knew I was going to talk about metaphysics. Well, at this point, I have no choice because for some inexplicable reason, Eddie Craig hasn't called in. Can't help but be a little concerned about him. But next show I can actually have him on will be December 4th. I'll try to get him on because I don't have any guests on my show in that time. But anyway, if you gather a large following of people, the more it's going to come back to haunt the Illuminati or the control system if they harm you. Webbot creator Cliff High said, what I'm about to say might sound a little bit idolatrous, but this makes sense to anybody who understands the science of consciousness. If you have a large following of people and they murder you, then killing you, the consequence to them killing you, whatever, a fundamental law of consciousness, if you do something bad, then whatever consequences you receive will be equal to that evil act that you committed. Likewise, if you do something good, whatever you get will be of equal value to the good that you committed. By killing someone like a David Icke and Alex Jones, and this is the real reason these people are still alive. I mean, they say if they kill me, it'll make everything I say more valid. Well, yeah, that's true, but at a metaphysical level, look at the thing known as the Mandelbrot set, perfect relation of reality. Mathematics shows that this is how reality works. Every small part of the Mandelbrot set is a small part of the greater whole. Reality, the universe, the multiverse, can be described by the Mandelbrot set because every small part of the hologram is a smaller representation of the greater whole. The more higher consciousness level you received, and consequently the higher following you receive, the higher your Mandelbrot set representation will be relative to the greater set. Consequently, if they kill you, then that will cause a huge disturbance beyond infinite consciousness, which in turn will cause that whatever that person stood for, like in this case freedom, to reverberate a lot more throughout consciousness. That's the real reason, the metaphysical real reason why freedom fighters like Alex Jones, David Icke, Jim Marrs, Jordan Maxwell don't get murdered. They might get harassed, but the Illuminati wouldn't dare murder them because if they do, they're in a lot of trouble. This is how consciousness works. This is how reality works, and I'm talking about this stuff because it's Nature of Reality Radio. Wanted to start off small with the law and some conspiracies. Now I'm talking into metaphysics. So sue me, folks. I have too much free time on my hands, and with great free time comes great responsibility, and that includes making your own radio show like this, like I have done. Thank you, Greg Prescott, for the inspiration. But anyway, get out. Be active, and well, let me say one thing. David Icke talked about this in his Wembley event, and I'm going to talk about it now. One of the most pathetic ways of getting active, arguing over the internet. Don't do that, people. It's so pathetic. Oh, he's not responding. I won the argument. That is so ridiculous. It's so pathetic. You're not doing anything except arguing with some letters and numbers of a person you don't even know. In many cases, they're just government trolls who are paid $80 an hour just to try to write anything on the internet to discredit people who try to get the truth out. I myself have been victimized. Hey, I don't mind using the internet to get info out. I'm not a book writer, but I'm a forum poster. Every time I write a post on David Icke's website forum, I try to kill two birds with one stone by writing something on Alex Jones's Planet Infowars page. And do the same. And if somebody says something wrong, correct them. And if you see a troll say something that can easily be debunked, then, hey, by all means, reply to the comment, say something. A few people may only see the comment, but it'll create a snowball effect, which in turn will wake up a lot more people. But don't argue, folks. It's pathetic. So talk the talk, walk the walk, or shut the hell up, as David Icke said in his talk. And everyone applauded after that. How about that? Walk the walk, talk the talk, don't argue over the internet, get active the real way, or shut the hell up. Meditate if you want. Hey, I only meditate on weekends. Don't want to get into a ritual of doing it every day. I mean, they say meditate on weekends. Well, keep it small. I mean, if you are infinite, you realize you're infinite, you don't really have to meditate much because you know what you are. What's the point in meditating more? And you know that when you know that you don't need to expand your consciousness to meditation when you already realize you are infinite conscious. Hey, it helps, and that's why I do it. Helps you attain higher levels that you wouldn't otherwise be able to attain in this third dimensional level, in this matrix. But it doesn't really have to be done. Getting out and getting active is by far much more important than meditation. And when you meditate, this is also very important, I want to get out. I often listen to George Kavassilas. I'll be Australian consciousness expert George Kavassilas. He'll be on my show in a couple of weeks. Had an interview with him recently when I paid $100 or so for a session with him. Hey, everybody's got to make money some way. He's not just doing it for the money. He's doing it because he cares for people. Everybody needs money to exist in this third dimensional level. Because we signed a soul contract with money, unless you want to move in with a tribe in the Amazon rainforest, which is not particularly pleasant for many people. But George Kavassilas says, when you meditate, and I agree with this, when you meditate with your heart, radiate energy out. Don't bring the energy in. Radiate it out. Meditate with your heart. Meditate with your consciousness essence. Meditate with your aura. Let it all out, expand into consciousness. You're only a small representation of the whole. But since you're infinite, it affects everything, albeit at small levels. But when you try to meditate energy in, you will consequently bring in fear energy. You are allowing fear energy to come in. Now, granted, I always recommend asking your spirit guides and guardian angels for guidance and assistance to protect you while you're meditating. Even then, I don't think it's always going to be possible for them to help you because they themselves are in a battle. Okay, that's something definitely for another show. But now that I mentioned that, I think I better get into some spiritual stuff before the show ends. But onto this subject, when you meditate with your heart, get your energy out, let it spread, let it flow. And energy flows where attention goes. The more people meditate, the more love will come out. This past July 4th, I was on a mission to get the square root of 1% of the global population, which is the magic number, to meditate simultaneously for 10 minutes to suppress love throughout consciousness. And I don't know if I got the magic number of people. I did get a lot of help, did call a lot of people, but by doing that, getting the square root of 1% of the global population to meditate together, I would have created, if it happened, enough energy to permanently suppress the amount of fear on Earth and consciousness in general. And now the New World Order control system would not be as evil as it possibly could be had I not done this. And you know what? I might as well make this a plea for help. Hey, someone who's listening, do the same thing. Do the same thing. Try to get the square root of 1% of the global population at some given day and time, preferably a time where a lot of people will be available, like a holiday or something, and have them meditate simultaneously in the hope that you can suppress fear throughout consciousness and spread love throughout consciousness, and it will permanently suppress fear and suppress the control system. If I can do it, you can do it. If I create a show, you guys can create a show. Create your own show. Get a following. Can't stress this enough. I pick doing something to get a following of people over meditation and spiritual stuff any day. A sheeple who meditates will never be able to attain a high level of consciousness as much as someone who doesn't meditate or doesn't get metaphysical but gets the truth out enough to get a following. And it is my hope that by doing this show, I can encourage other people to do the same. I don't care if you schedule your show doing mine. I like the competition. Schedule your show during mine if you want, if you have to schedule Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. I like the competition. If that was the case, it wouldn't bother me one bit, because this is all about competition. dedicated to my life exposing corruption, dedicated my life to exposing the control system, the Illuminati, the cover-ups, the conspiracies, and everything that goes with it. And, boy, Zuma said Craig. Who knows what happened to him? Definitely going to ask him about this. Hope he's all right. But I actually had a lot of fun doing this solo. Can't imagine why nobody called in. Are they scared of me or something? I understand I may have done a little fear-mongering here, but still, I meant well. I don't know why nobody wanted to listen in. I mean, no one wanted to call in, But anyway, one thing I want to really get into, since I was talking about spiritual stuff, I mean, people might take that as meaning that I'm religious, and they say, oh, he's religious, he's biased, he follows a specific code. Well, one thing I need to expose about the nature of reality that's kind of important to breaking free of this control system matrix. You have to understand, I'll put it this way, I have the utmost respect for the right to choose your own religion. Freedom of religion, it's a great right. It's one of the most important rights you could have. No freedom of religion, no free will. And you need to have free will. But I hate to say this, but many of the religions, all the major religions, and vast majority, and I mean the vast majority of the minor religions, with rare exceptions, were created to suppress human consciousness. They were created they teach benevolent things, no question about that. And some people see help in that. But in many ways, that's an illusion. I have the utmost respect for freedom of religion, but at the same time, I do not believe religion is taking up a good idea for this reason. You cannot attain a high level of consciousness if you follow a belief system that says that you are a wretched being unless you follow that belief system. Sorry if you think that's a lousy way of looking at it, but that's what religions do. They teach benevolent things, but at the same time they say, this is the way it is. If you don't follow it, you're not right. You're not doing right. Well, the religions in that sense are wrong. They have to be wrong. As I've explained earlier, we are infinite consciousness, space and time are illusions. Everything is holographic. You are a smaller representation of the whole. You'll hear me say that over and over again, but it bears repeating. To basically understand that, as George Cavaslo says, your soul is your Godhead. You are God. You are infinite consciousness. Every night when I ask my guardian angels and spirit guides to guide me and protect me and keep me safe from fear energy, and my fellow humans and me safe from fear energy, and going with love energy, I always tell them, I always end my pleas with, my pleas with, by saying my soul is my Godhead. Something that you want to say over and over because it's true. You are God. You are infinite. Everything is God. Everything is infinite. We are all one consciousness. So how can religions be true? They can't be. But what is the true nature of reality? Well, this is something that's going to be covered in much greater detail in later shows. I can get off to a start here by saying that there are metaphysicians, remote viewers, and meditators. Remote viewing, that's the ability to access higher states of consciousness to perceive anywhere, anything, anytime, and take advantage of the fact that time and space are illusions. CIA uses remote viewers. Just think I'm kidding. Read Jim Marrs' book, Alien Agenda. But these higher dimensional consciousness entities that many people, countless people, have perceived, these are the real spirit guides and guardian angels. I don't mean angels in a Christian sense. I'm talking about benevolent aliens that are watching over us. I shouldn't say aliens because that's kind of a derogatory term. Entities is definitely a better term there. These malevolent entities from above the third dimension of consciousness, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, they're watching over us, protecting us, in many ways creating our reality. Remote viewers, including this remote viewer I saw in a documentary on the UFO TV Studios YouTube channel, said they do have the ability to implant thoughts in people's minds, among other things. They don't get involved unless they are asked for help. Don't want to ask them too much because that's being greedy, and greed leads to fear. But the fact that countless remote viewers have seen that these higher dimensional ETs exist, and that there are other dimensions, other realms, I think it can be safe to assert that in many ways the religions of the world, not just to suppress our consciousness, but are also used to keep us in the dark about the true nature of reality that's not us, at the multidimensional level, multi-physical level, who the real angels are and what their intentions are. Yeah, they don't want us to know that, so they created religion. And that's why I do not advise taking up a religion. It's not something that's good to tell people sometimes. I mean, the truth is the truth no matter how you slice it. You want to get it out. But because some people's belief systems are too rigid that they can't be woken up under any circumstance, no matter what the evidence shows, because I said people are so stupid. I shouldn't say that, but really don't know if you can think of a better term. Maybe they're too fearful, too paradigmatic, or just too flat out stupid. Either way, not saying religious people are stupid. Please don't take that out of context. They are very, very smart. They're just ignorant. Ignorant of what they've gotten themselves into. Hello, area code 832. Who's this?
Hey, name's Max, Houston, Texas.
Oh, yeah, glad to call in. How you doing? I'm sorry that Eddie Craig didn't call, but I'm glad I finally got a caller in. You interrupted me as I was exposing something disturbing, but what do you want to talk about?
Oh, no, I would have called earlier. I had a family member come over, and they I had to explain to him that you can't listen in. I have to turn it down or else it'll feedback, you know. Sorry, buddy. But anyway,
okay.
So he took off. I just wanted to call in and give my support. I'm glad you made your own talk show. It's interesting. I guess I never heard of Blog Talk Radio, but call me ignorant. But it seems like a cool idea. And hell, I'm glad people are getting together, and and I can I'm glad to help you on Planet InfoWars and stuff like that, and other people. And I like your idea of, hey, why don't we all start a talk radio show and more.
By the way, are you
better,
LMNOP user?
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh yeah, you're the LMNOP guy who's helped me with the layout. I apologize for not giving you credit for the banner to my show. I will certainly be asking Eddie. By the way, I encourage the viewers to befriend Eddie on his Facebook page, Tao Law, Tao spelled T-A-O space Law. He'll be launching his website, TaoofLaw.com soon. It's taking a while for him to launch it. I can't help but wonder if the government is using time travel technology to prevent it from being launched, or if anything, he's probably just trying to make sure the security is at maximum ability, which is what we need. But that site will be the ultimate crime-fighting tool in the Patriot community. Hook up your smartphones to a computer and everything to prevent tyranny from happening, and all the cops will be caught on film if they're doing bad things and going to a computer, and also your trials and everything, and it'll be hopefully nobody will sabotage it. And Eddie said he's find some way to not sabotage it. But
yeah, I guess I'd like to go ahead and thank Mr. Eddie Craig on the record too, because yesterday I had my court case, the 5th of November, no less, and all 4 charges were dismissed. I didn't give anybody a dime. I didn't show them anything other than my passport to prove it was me in court. It was beautiful. And, I definitely want to thank him for that. So, but now I'm bored. I have no more court cases to study for. What am I going to do with all my time? But I like some of your take on being infinite and stuff like that. I've read, a lot of, like Flower of Life and that kind of thing. So, I'm familiar with what you're talking about. I think a lot of times terminology like that can you can alienate people with it. Like they hear them as negative buzzwords because of organized religion or whatnot. So, but I'm following you, and I'm also, I'm a Christian too. I believe in that, and I believe that also this can be with it too. It's kind of like only believe in Christianity, and there's no such thing as evolution and natural stuff like that. So I don't put it beyond a god or an entity or an alien, as a derogatory term, to would have the ability to do both if they were indeed as divine and all powerful as a god would have to be. So, but I'm following you, and are you gonna have any kind of archives or anything like that, or does Blog Talk Radio?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna upload
archives?
all this. Yeah, I'm gonna upload this onto my YouTube channel, which is Fan of 2012, just like my username. And my next guest next week, I might as well get this out, will be metaphysician and tarot reader and psychic Sean Cohen from the UK, and then the week after that I'll have George Kavassilis on. But I might as well take it week by week. I'll try to get Eddie on the December 4th. That's the only opening I have. I don't know, I hate to think that they tried to keep him from getting on my show. I mean, I'm not that much big of a threat to the system, am I? I don't know. Maybe the stuff.
Well, I don't know, buddy. Eddie on Monday, he said that he had been invited to the Houston Municipal Court Bar Association, and he said that he proceeded to say that he doesn't know how they got his name or if this is legitimate. He's going to check into it, and I was like, buddy, I'm probably how they got your name. Because I did my due diligence, tried to hire an attorney, or at least, have the appearance of doing that, and showing them some of the traffic seminar motions and stuff. And not many of those bar association lawyers were down to do that defense. So I finally found, one who was. He said, okay, well, we'll go with this. But he told me, but you're going to lose. And they backed down. They wouldn't even fight me, so. I thought it was beautiful, but anyway, so, and yeah, I hope that he launches his Tao of Law too soon, because I've been waiting for the app and whatnot also, so I think that's gonna be definitely a boon to the Patriot community.
Right, it will be, and so well, I'm glad I didn't offend you with that stuff I said about religion just now. I mean, hey, we are entitled to your own belief system. I have the utmost respect for freedom of religion. And even Eddie follows a Christian code, he's actually said, and that's your prerogative. I've just seen the evidence to say that since it suppresses your consciousness, it's not particularly a good idea. And if people don't want to listen to me because I talk about that, well, that's their problem. What other people think about me is none of my business or concern, because that's the ultimate prison, and that's one thing I'm going to be saying over and over again on this show, that you should not give a damn
after all,
about.
You call it Nature Reality Show, and that is the way our reality is. There are people who are religious, and there are people who are less so, or who are just, they call quote spiritual. There's a variety out there anyway, so it wouldn't make sense for you to have the show Nature of Reality and not approach the nature of reality, the fact that there is a broad spectrum of a variety of stripe of people out there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was hoping to start off small with today's show, just getting into laws and conspiracies, and then taking it to the next level, but I was forced to take it to the next level because of some unexpected non-guest appearance. So I'm glad you were calling in, though. You're the only guy in the guest board, so I guess we might as well ride off into the sunset in the 9 minutes we have left on this show together, unless another caller comes on, in which case I'll let you go until then. But appreciate your help.
Yeah, well,
I don't actually have...
Okay, well, no problem, dude. I'm glad to be here. But no, if you could, can you? I mean, amazing lineups. I mean, you're talking about, like some serious people out there who, like what did you do? You just email these people and plead your case and say I'm starting a radio show? How did that pitch work?
It's simple as in the title bar, right? Want to come on my show, and then say I would love to have you as a guest on my show from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the web address. Want to come on, and hopefully they'll get back. And I've gotten
easy, huh?
Several people. Oh yeah, for the most part.
Well, then I think that they do consider you and I a threat. Even us little guys, you know. I mean, if it's just as easy as want to come on my show in the subject line, I mean, nice hustle.
Yeah.
And good example. So, again, props for what you do here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're totally on my side. I mean, you have to understand, some people like me who talk about really crazy things, they're not going to perceive me as a threat because, after all, who's going to believe that our leaders are interdimensional reptile aliens masquerading as humans? Well, that explains why they don't bother David Icke with the stuff he talks about. I mean, you think that they're going to bother me with the stuff I talk? Well, I mean, who knows? There's another ET contactee by the name of Alex Collier, who is a conspiracy theorist and an ET contactee, and you would think that he wouldn't get hassled for the stuff he talks about. But they've actually hassled the heck out of him because even though he talks about the ETs and the nature of reality from a galactic perspective, from the cosmos, he seems to present it in a way that shows that he's serious and he knows what he's talking about. And if you present it like that, then eventually, regardless of how crazy the stuff is you talk about, they will perceive you as a threat. So that's certainly something to keep in mind.
Well, you're gonna have to post more links and stuff to where I can at least look into, because I've heard the reptilians and stuff like that, but I'm not quite sold on it yet. So I mean, but I'm not a stubborn man either. I mean, I'm an open-minded individual, so I'd like you to post more information on stuff like that, to where at least you're putting it out there,
Well, I post it on Planet Infowars all the time. I mean, there aren't many posters on Planet Infowars who will talk about extraterrestrials as much as I do, and I often do it all the time, and even consciousness stuff. Even though Alex doesn't get into that stuff on his show, I think it's worth talking about. I mean, some people that are in Alex's field act as gatekeepers, and I find it really sad. Like Julian Assange, for example, won't touch 9/11 with a 90-foot pole. He refuses to go there, and they call him the world's greatest whistleblower anyway. I mean, I don't know. He's not willing to touch 9/11. Should be considered the world's greatest whistleblower? I mean, I don't think so. And Richard C. Hoagland, another example, he's shown countless pictures in front of the United Nations, mind you, too, showing that there's structures on Mars and the moon and everything like that.
Yeah,
and he refuses to discuss. Yeah, and he refuses to discuss like whether there's life on the moon and Mars now. And Alex Collier said, I once approached Richard Hoagland and I asked him, Richard, why won't you tell the world that the moon is a giant artificial body? And Richard said, I'm not ready to. Well, there you got someone.
And notice how the narrative is changing. It was either on Infowars or Drudge today, but I think it came from rolled over from yesterday. Was they said that now the new number of there's probably billions of habitable planets in our solar system or in our universe, or in our galaxy. I believe they said.
Well, let me elaborate on that since you mentioned that. John Lear, UFO researcher and pilot John Lear, in his Project Camelot interview, mentioned
the owner
that.
of Learjet.
Actually, George Kavaslis confirmed this too when I interviewed him a few days ago, which actually is on my YouTube channel, that interview, if you want to listen to it. They've both said that it doesn't matter how hot the star is, it doesn't matter how far the planet is from the sun. Every planet has its own consciousness, which in turn makes every planet has its own filtering system. And every planet's filtering system is set up so that there will be life on that planet. If it's not at this third dimensional level, it will be in another dimension of consciousness. And that's
almost in a state of habitable and fertile without anything happening. It's naturally in that state, and only disasters would normally tend to keep it away from becoming habitable. Is that what you kind of mean?
Well, those planets probably have their own disasters, but the thing is, from my understanding, is every planet, because of this filtering system that they have, because their consciousness has life on it, but Earth, from my understanding, is like the only planet in the Milky Way, at least, maybe not the universe, but the Milky Way anyway, not only where we use money, but also where we have a choice between fear and love. Every other planet is strictly love-based. For the resident, or strictly fear-based in some cases. It's not a combination of the two like it is to the extent on Earth, but every planet does have life, and that's all the more reason why NASA should stand for, not always a straight answer.
Well, okay, look, your show's almost up. Let me let you monologue your way out, brother. I just wanted to call in and give you some support.
Thanks. Glad I was able to get a call, and I'll get to the bottom of why Eddie wasn't able to join me. I think I did a pretty good job on my show, even though I went into some pretty crazy stuff from my first show. But you ain't seen nothing yet, I can assure you there.
Happy inaugural show there.
All right, I'll let you go, and I'll ride off into the sunset introducing my next week's guest. Hopefully she'll be on. All right, later.
Bye.
All right, next on my list, I want to point out that next week on my show, I will have metaphysician, tarot reader, and psychic Sean Cohen from the, she lives in the UK, lived in Pittsburgh, but moved to the UK. She actually made a pretty bold statement about me when I called into the In5D radio show, which is also a Blog Talk radio show owned by In5D.com creator Greg Prescott. She said that she actually expected, and she told me this 3 months ago, big things are going to happen from you, Andrew. Big things in about 6 months. You have to get started now, right now. Well, created this radio show to hope that 6 months prediction of hers come true. I don't know what she meant by big things are going to happen from me, but I swear I'll make the most of it, and I'll be talking to her next week, hopefully, and hopefully we'll be able to raise the vibrations of the earth, suppress fear throughout earth. Even if I have to fear monger a little bit, it may happen, but we'll do our best to spread love through our consciousness, suppress fear through our consciousness, and you'll also get a better understanding of how consciousness works and whatnot, and also why things like tarots work and why psychic abilities are possible. So, folks, can end it now. Hope to see you next week. And I'll try to get Eddie back on the show December 4th. Hope y'all tune in for that.